Welcome. My name is Adrienne, and I came across this article yesterday looking at all the drone drama on X. And after I opened it, read the abstract, I just couldn't stop. And I figured since I went through all 109 pages, and not a lot of people were talking about it on YouTube, I would go ahead and take the time to read to you the parts that I felt are important and just give you my take on the article. So, this is by the Journal of Modern Physics. The title of the article is Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Extraterrestrial Life, Plasmoids, Shapeshifters, Replicons, Thunderstorms, Lightning, Hallucinations, Aircraft Disasters, and Ocean Sightings. Wow, that is a title. I have never read a scientific article with a title like that, but that doesn't mean it does not have a lot of science in it, because it does. So we have a lot of people to thank, the people who did the research and wrote the article. And I'm just going to apologize for probably pronouncing your name incorrectly. At times I pronounce my own name incorrectly. But today we have Ron Joseph to thank, Oliver Plankon, Christopher Impey, Richard Armstrong, Carl Gibson, and Rudolph Schild. Thank you so much for taking the time and using your expertise to really assimilate all of this interesting science, anecdotal stories, and really creating some interesting points and asking some even more interesting questions. So thank you. This is available online to everyone. So please pull it up, go through it with me. Check it out on your own, because there are some really excellent photos that we'll go through. And anyhow, welcome. Let's get started. So as I was going through it yesterday, I did do some highlighting. There really was no rhyme or reason to the colors or what I highlighted. I was just kind of doing it to keep track of what I was going through, because I would get through a section, go check on dinner, come back, do dishes. So it's a lot of back and forth, and I just like color. So there is no code behind the color choices. I'm going to get started with the abstract. And as I go along, if there's a section where you really want to learn more about it or have me read the whole entire section, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to do so if there is someone out there interested. My assumption is that this video will likely just go out into the black hole of YouTube, and likely no one will see it. That's okay. I'm having fun. Hopefully someone will get something out of this, because I think it's cool. Okay, as documented by NASA Space Shuttle films and detailed in this report, self-illuminating pulsating plasma-like UAP UFO plasmoids have multiple shapes and sizes, are attracted to electromagnetic activity, and travel at different velocities from different directions. So right off the bat, we are really talking about how these plasmoids could be the source of a lot of the UAP, UFO phenomena. Very interesting. Plasmas also have explosive properties, negatively affecting electronics and mental activities, possibly inducing hallucinations of alien abductions. They pass through glass, plastic, metal, and enter the cockpits of airplanes, and have been observed by astronauts inside spacecraft, the MIR and ISS. Now, this is something that I've always been fascinated about ball lightning, and I've done some research on this in the past. So it's really neat that they're kind of bringing this into it and offering an explanation. It is hypothesized that given their propensity to collide, plasmoids may be responsible for at least some unexplained, inexplicable aircraft disasters. Well, that certainly is sad, but it definitely provides an explanation that is based in science. I like that in the abstract, they're talking about how a lot of the things that people report due to UAPs and UFOs may have a very kind of electrical reason behind it, and that may be plasmas. We're going to learn more about plasmas, and then you're going to let me know what you think. Thunder, lightning, storms are the main drivers of Earth's GEC and direct positive currents into the ionosphere, which attract plasmas. So, a lot of this article talks about the different layers within our atmosphere, how we kind of have electrical charges, how that affects the electromagnetic currents, and really how it creates a atmosphere that attracts plasmas and plasmoids. I think you're going to find it very interesting science. Plasmoids appear to purposefully interact and engage in complex behaviors, and it is suspected they are sentient and represent a fourth domain of life. Now, when I read this in the abstract yesterday, I was like, what? I just couldn't believe what I was reading. So, of course, I had to keep reading and learn more. So, the key words within this article, we have some interesting ones: the fourth domain of life, extremophiles, unidentified flying objects, and unidentified ocean phenomenon. So, be prepared to enjoy yourself. This is pretty cool information. So, thunderstorms are major sources of positive charges directed to the ionosphere and likely provide excitatory charges to plasmoids congregating above and those descending within these raging storms. Thunderstorms also provide negative charges to Earth's surface, which is surrounded by insulating lower atmospheres that are also positively charged, whereas the ocean surface under whitewater and turbulent conditions may develop a positive charge. As documented here and in NASA Space Shuttle films, plasmoids will congregate near the space shuttle and descend into lightning storms and the lower atmosphere, which is the air corridor favored by commercial and military aircraft. And we hypothesize this accounts for reports of UAPs following harassing, chasing, and toying with aircrafts. Plasmas also have explosive properties, negatively affect electronics and mental activity, possibly inducing hallucinations of alien abductions, and pass through glass, plastic, metal, and enter the cockpits of airplanes and have been observed by astronauts inside the spacecraft MIR and ISS. This is just kind of a repeat of what they had in the abstract, but it's really talking about, hey, there may be a scientific explanation for what people see while they're in aircrafts. And this thing that they see may also create a lot of the phenomena associated with UAP, problems with electronics, and kind of changes within perception of reality itself. We'll talk more about that later on in this article. The thermosphere ionosphere is a positively charged environment, and plasmas are negatively charged physical, electrical, and magnetic phenomena comprised of negative, positive, and neutral charges and cellular layers. Those of the upper ionosphere and lower atmosphere have various shapes, sizes, and colors, and some consist of multiple plasmas and can replicate, forming additional plasma as well as can change shape. That kind of makes sense if we're talking about something with an electrical component. Let's keep going. Glowing, pulsating, brightly lit plasmas have also been filmed in the thermosphere, traveling across America and descending towards and above the ocean. As noted during periods of turbulence and whitewater conditions, the surface of the ocean and air and atmosphere directly above are also positively charged, as is the ionosphere. Thus, the ocean may be attractive to plasmas, thereby accounting for numerous observations of UAPs above the ocean by Navy ships and naval aviators. So again, it's saying here's another location where a lot of people tend to see what we're calling UAPs. And again, the conditions seem to be right for plasmas and plasmoids. We find that thunderstorms are really important for creating the types of atmospheres necessary for these plasmas. And we find that plasmoids from the ionosphere that dive into thunderstorms are also descending to an altitude where commercial and military jets typically fly. So it makes sense that they're going to see them more often. Plasmas in the lower atmosphere would account for the numerous observations over thousands of years of glowing orbs flying above the cities. and encounters with UAPs by civilian and military pilots prior to, during, and after the Second World War, and who were not uncommonly reported that brightly lit UAP have followed, confronted, and nearly collided with them, as exemplified by the following report. Now, you're going to have to let me know in the comments, and if there's a lot of you that would like me to go into all the anecdotal stories, I certainly will. I find them fun. So just let me know. But there is one that I have heard quite a bit about that I wanted to touch on. Some I will, some we just have to skip over so we can get through all of this before my kids get home from school. So the term flying saucer has been attributed to Kenneth Arnold, who on June 24th, 1947, observed a flash of light like a mirror reflecting sunlight and a chain-like formation of 9 brightly scintillating lights that were flipping from side to side and flying erratically, weaving, dipping like the tail of a kite and like stones being skipped over water, and that flew like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water, and flashing brightly and changing shape from the disc and platter shaped to a crescent, with some having a shape like sky jellyfish with a pulsating thing in the middle of them. Arnold has repeatedly emphasized that initial news accounts misquoted him, and he does not believe in little green men stories or that these shape-changing crescent and disc and jellyfish-shaped objects and lights are spaceships from other worlds, but that they are in fact living organisms, space and atmospheric organisms, that they have the natural ability to change their densities at will. He's quoted as saying, "After some 14 years of extensive research, it is my conclusion that the so-called unidentified flying objects that have been seen in our atmosphere are not spaceships from another planet at all, but are groups and masses of living organisms that are as much a part of our atmosphere and space as the life we find in our oceans." The first author of this report, based on analysis of NASA's extensively occluded space shuttle films, came to the identical conclusions. Now, I had heard that he was misquoted, but I really did not understand just how much and what it was that he actually said. And I found this to be quite surprising, that this was already an accepted opinion. I think it's pretty interesting. These observations, fact-based hypotheses, and conclusions that many, but not all, UAPs are actually cellular electromagnetic plasma are supported by the analysis of the British Ministry of Defense, which conducted a multidisciplinary analysis of UAP phenomena based on information collected over 30 years. The UAP/UFO are comprised of several types of rarely encountered natural events within the atmosphere and ionosphere. The events are almost certainly attributable to physical, electrical, and magnetic phenomena in the atmosphere, mesosphere, and ionosphere. The fact that the objects reportedly have the maneuver and acceleration attributes of a inertialess vehicle reinforces the hypothesis that they are buoyant charged bodies. Actually, that statement there does make quite a bit of sense. We hypothesize, based on factual evidence, that some plasmoids may be sentient and conscious of their surroundings and engage in purposeful interactions, that they may represent a fourth domain of life. So there it is again, kind of has my biologist brain wondering what it is that they're going to come up with throughout this article. So, the NASA film footage compiled by the first author and is documented via freeze frame reproduced in this report some plasmoids engaging in complex behaviors and what could be constructed as curiosity and evidence of intelligence. Moreover, astronauts have reported that glowing plasma-like entities have appeared outside shuttle windows, often traveling from window to window as if looking inside, and in doing so, upsetting the crew. And glowing plasmas have entered homes, businesses, and even through cockpit windows. In one instance, it is then slowly moved about the interior of the plane as if uh, I'm not sure what that word is. Moreover, plasma UAP encountered in the troposphere have been accused of surveillance, mimicry, toying with, and harassing aircraft, and so on. So, what's interesting is as I'm reading this, I'm thinking back to an interview that I heard with Lou Elizondo, and he talks about a green glowing light traveling in his hallways at his house. And this kind of is maybe creating a connection for me. I wonder if he's read this article. Further, plasmoids appear to be aware of each other, as evident by numerous examples of turning, following, targeting, colliding, and merging. To speculate, and I appreciate that the authors are letting us know that they are speculating. Although not all plasmoids behave the same, when considered as a collective, their behavior and their conglomerate structure could be likened to eukaryotic algae. Now that's fascinating. They're comparing it to Eudorina elegans. For example, although Eudorina may look like a single organism, it is actually a conglomerate consisting of up to 64 cells loosely grouped together. Likewise, as documented in this report, what looks like single cloud-like plasmoids in some cases actually consist of dozens of individual plasmas grouped together, forming plasma conglomerates that engage in coordinated action to produce what appears to be purposeful behavior. Plasmoids can generate additional plasmoids as they are reproducing in a way and generate plasmas that also engage in complex behaviors as documented in this report and by NASA video. It is important to avoid anthropomorphizing what may be purely electromagnetic push-pull attraction, repulsion, when exposed to highly charged environments and surrounded by plasmas of opposite or similar or changing electric charge. This was such a good point that just because something acts as if it is alive, in terms of what biologists consider to be a living organism, that doesn't mean that it's not just beautiful chemistry and physics in action. However, according to Alphen, these plasmas contain cellular membranes, whereas plasma with a nucleus have been repeatedly observed and which contain glowing spheres within. To speculate, these internal spheres could be constructed as ganglia and neural networks or circular double-stranded DNA plasmids that have the ability to replicate and self-clone. Based on laboratory experiments, a number of scientists have proposed that dusty plasmas may form crystalline RNA DNA helical structures and may represent a non-biological form of life or pre-life. Well, that is interesting, isn't it? Let's see what they are able to prove as we go along. Plasmoids appear to be electrical phenomenon attracted to and with some possibility being produced by lightning. It's been hypothesized that dusty plasma in the thermosphere may have incorporated all the necessary elements for the synthesis of RNA leading to DNA and thus life. Stanley Miller and Harold Urey, in their famous experiments designed to produce life, exposed a mixture of gases and elements to a continuous electrical spark, simulating lightning, and produced organic chemicals in 33 different amino acids, including 11 of those necessary to create the proteins required by all living organisms. Now, I think this mention, which I remember learning about in school, is worth exploring in an episode of its own. I don't remember enough of the details to remember how accurate this description of it is, but What they're presenting sounds pretty amazing. This later hypothesis is not merely speculation. I guess we should read this upper part. If life can be created via interactions with lightning and an enclosure containing the necessary elements, it can be predicted that every world with a gaseous atmosphere and thunderclouds is inhabited by plasmas, and that these dusty plasmas spawned life on innumerable Earth-like planets billions of years older than Earth, life that may have evolved. Thus, some UAP may be spacecraft from other worlds. Well, that was a pretty important paragraph. Glad I went back. This later hypothesis is not mere speculation, as it is evident NASA has added layers of obscuring noise/snow to space shuttle films. The US military refuses to release all the relevant information, and space shuttle film footage that NASA released to the public depicts glowing forms that established a V formation and followed a space shuttle, and then the camera was turned off. So there is a lot of this discussion through the article, not all of what we'll go through, but of how some of the video footage that NASA records becomes almost altered. And in a way, they're suggesting that NASA is doing this on purpose because they don't want us to see what's really going on out there. And I'm not putting it past NASA to do that. In fact, it's definitely possible. But at the same time, this article has discussed how there is a lot of electrical disturbances due to these plasmoids. And to me, it also seems equally likely that they could be affecting the quality of the footage. This is just a guess. I have not done my research on it, but just intuitively, that's how I feel at the moment. So I know a lot of us have heard of David Fravor, who was the former Navy commander and really opened our eyes to a lot of the UAPs, their superior technology, and has been a real blessing to the world of UAPs. We're going to skip a lot of this section and take a look at some pictures. When we get to the images, I'm going to, let me do this first. I'm going to go to the description so we can just get a grasp on what is being shown, since it all doesn't fit onto the screen at once, and then we'll go back through the images. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the plasma approaching the MIR International Space Station from multiple directions. We're also going to be noting the void or nucleus in the second row and the bottom row and what resembles ovid ganglia within the interior of the plasma. Again, noting them to be kind of like nerves is an interesting choice. I think it may be a bit much, but that doesn't mean it's not fascinating nonetheless. Okay. Now, a lot of these images have been kind of enhanced in order for us to see some of the distinctions. So what we're looking at here is we have this man-made object here, and here we have the plasmoid. We're taking a kind of closer, in-depth look at it and noticing how it is changing a bit and how this could look like a nucleus inside the plasmoid. At least that's my understanding from the description below. We also see the plasmoid moving, changing direction, others popping up, and so forth. I highly, again, recommend you pulling up this article at home and going through at least the images so you can see them yourself and just really take the time to figure out what's going on in each one. Okay, now we're going to look at an anomalous, elongated, pulsating object that followed NASA's space shuttle as it orbited into the night side of Earth. As the tail of the shuttle disappeared in the darkness, the pulsating object grew brighter as it approached the shuttle, at which point the camera was turned off. Suspicious, or did it just create an electrical disturbance? We likely will never know. But let's take a look at what we have, and I sure appreciate the authors taking the time to find this kind of video footage and then bringing it into focus through some images. Okay, so we have this plasma here. Seems to be cylindrical. Now we're going to enhance this area and looks kind of like a tic tac. And then here's the image in which they're saying that it was just too blurry, too much noise was added to the image, therefore wasn't able to be clear. It definitely reminds me of the tic tac description that we've kind of all heard about. Okay, this next set of pictures are plasmoids swarming together and gathering around an unelectrified tether. These entities range in size, and they document these plasmas that contain a void nucleus and possibly two internal forms that may not be interconnected. So now it is starting to look kind of like almost a cell dividing in these pictures. I mean, when I look at C, I'm thinking of mitosis, like the last stages. It's pretty crazy. So here at the top, we are seeing different plasmoids and then taking a closer look at them. They sure are interesting. It would be nice to have the video to look at to really see these things kind of coming from nowhere and how they're acting. But that being said, the kind of magnified images of them sure are interesting. So in this one, they're just talking about the frenzied collisional behavior. This just kind of shows them moving around. I have a hard time making heads or tails out of these images, so we're going to keep on moving. This picture is trying to kind of show in, I guess, a computerized analysis of flight paths, showing the film footage and how these plasmoids were moving, is my understanding. So just saying that they're kind of going all different directions, moving in ways that we do not typically associate with, a typical aircraft. Hundreds of cone and cloud-shaped glowing plasmoids with an internal nucleus filmed congregating 200 miles above an electric thunderstorm by STS-80, processed via photor filtering software. Very small forms and those that are not illuminated have also been detected in this footage. Interesting. It would be nice to take a look at the footage, but the images are certainly catching my attention. The way it seems to be like an outer layer kind of almost reminds me of an electron cloud with something denser in the center there. Ringed-shaped plasma hovers above a thunderstorm as a plasmoid materializes and disappears as it descends into the lower atmosphere. Okay, so they're showing that we have this kind of point of reference, and then all of a sudden we're also going to have something appear here in the white circle. The point of reference is also very interesting in terms of its appearance. I like how it has almost like a dark center to it. Then we have this kind of plasmoid, I guess we'll call it, appearing out of quite literally nowhere. Then we're going to kind of zoom in on it and take a look at the internal structure. And it really allows us to kind of, I guess, analyze some of its internal anatomy. This one's titled Two Plasmoids Near a Thunderstorm, One Replicates. Let's take a look at the description. Two glowing shape-shifting plasmoids near a thunderstorm, one of which, the far right, becomes elongated, and from which a third plasmoid emerges, then makes contact with the plasmoid on the far left, and then detaches. Plasmoids became three. Now, this is very blurry. I promise this is not my doing, and it is very interesting. I'm assuming that they were looking at film footage, and then all of a sudden these plasmoids just kind of came into view here started to move. And this is the one here on the right where you can start to see it almost kind of dividing, further division, and eventually they are separating. And now we have three. Okay, these set of images, some colliding plasmoids may be multiplasmatic conglomerates consisting of numerous plasmoids loosely joined together, forming a composite, single cloud-like entity up to or greater than a kilometer in size. To speculate, each individual plasma may be multipolar, similar to a multipolar cloud, thereby enabling different aspects with the positive versus negative charge to attach to its opposite. This also implies that the composite and each separate plasma are acting like a cooperative supraorganism that may detached plasmoids that may become replicons or satellites. It's very interesting. This image looks very clear here. And it does look to be what they are describing below, or at least a potential for what it appears to be. Plasmas have been filmed in the thermosphere, appearing from off camera, approaching and descending into thunderstorms, whereas others have subtly materialized and begin glowing in the space medium above thunderstorms. So we're just going to remind the readers and listeners that that's where a lot of these plasmas are known to be found. It is also possible that they and other plasmoids originate in and seep across from the fifth dimension when electromagnetic activity produced by a massive thunderbolt is transformed into mass that becomes a small black hole that pierces a brain, separating that fifth dimension from those four comprising our known universe. Some of those that materialize also appear to be emerging from a surrounding darkened area that could be likened to a hole in space-time. It is also likely that those that arrive from off camera, descending downwards, originated in the plasmosphere, a region of Earth's magnetosphere well above the ionosphere, and which consists of low energy cool plasma. Wow. Well, that description is very interesting. I know that I've heard some discussion of that being a theory in the past, and it's just fascinating to see this in a journal of modern physics. Interstellar space, the plasmosphere, and the ionosphere of Earth are permeated by plasmas and plasmoids and a variety of illuminated forms that at present are best described as plasmoids, or a form of life that is not carbon-based and devoid of DNA. Well, that is quite the statement. In the lower layers of the atmosphere, transient, self-illuminated, colorful entities, best described as plasmas, are produced by lightning, thunderstorms, or in association with seismic events, volcanoes, dust storms, geomagnetic anomalies, or the buildup of electric charges in fogs or ice crystals in the atmosphere. Arnold, who is attributed with the coining the term flying saucer, but who believes these are living organisms, also noted an association with seismic events, a belief now shared by many others. Plasmas of the thermosphere, ionosphere, regardless of their origins, appear to be electromagnetic entities and constitute a fourth state of matter that are produced by complex electromagnetic interactions. Although these plasmoids may have a metallic sheen, it is not known if they have solidity. According to Nobel laureate Hans Elfven, plasmas have a cellular structure consisting of inner and outer layers which differ in positive versus negative charges. These double layers act to repel plasma of the opposite charge, but combine with plasmas of the same charge, such that plasmoids may repel or be attracted to one another and exchange energy and engage in related behavior, which have been filmed by 10 separate space shuttle missions, is documented in this report and a compilation of NASA shuttle films. Very interesting. I would love to hear what you think. Okay, ions have a positive. Positive ions are also known as cations, or negative, known as anions, charge, and form positive or negatively charged layers that can attract, repel, or neutralize each other via the transfer and equalization of electrons, and which may enable plasmas to maneuver, accelerate, or hover via interaction with other plasmas and the charge of their localized environment. Possibly the cellular structure of the plasmoids of the ionosphere have incorporated and included cations and anions, which also form layers and encapsulate dust and debris that also have an electric charge. So this is really interesting. It's talking about how just some of the natural kind of chemistry and physics involved here could really account for the kind of movements and actions of these interacting plasmoids. Plasmas observed and filmed in the ionosphere, thermosphere, and those produced in laboratories, and yes, they can produce plasma in laboratories, include those of many types and which may have high or low density, high or low temperatures, and consist of positively and negatively charged particles, ionized atoms of gas, and whose basic interactions are electromagnetic. Therefore, many of those that have filmed within the ionosphere thermosphere are believed to consist of a double membrane, a nucleus, as well as electrified particles of dust and fragments from carbonaceous chondrites. So this is really going to play into later how it is possible that these kind of plasmas and plasmoids have helped in terms of seeding life on planets. The UAP plasma-like entities of the upper atmosphere are up to several dozen meters in diameter and have ovid, elongated, cloud, saucer, donut, cone, snake, and cylindrical shapes. And some even resemble transient phenomena, commonly referred to in the scientific literature as elves, sprites, and even jellyfish. These plasmoids react to and possibly form in response to lightning and thunderstorms. That makes sense based on the science that they've talked about so far, as well as the waxing and waning of electromagnetic fields, the Van Allen belts, geomagnetic storms, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, atmospheric waves, radiation from radio transmitters and heating facilities, volcanic eruptions, geomagnetic anomalies, seismic activity, and electrified dust, all which affect the shape, velocity, and behavior of plasmas. So, saying there are a lot of different things that affect plasmas and that help create plasmas, honestly. And so, it should not be surprising that we see all kinds of amazing things in the sky. And they're really offering an explanation for a majority of it, is how I'm interpreting it. As documented in this report and supplementary NASA film footage, these plasmoid life-like entities can turn their illumination off or on and will glow in the dark and are self-illuminating and may pulsate with light. The amount of light emitted may be determined or influenced by the type of particles that are shed via electron discharge and a reduction in, or conversely, an increase in electron cloud density. The glow may also be a form of bioluminescence and or is produced via the transition from bipolar charging to a more dominant role of ions and particle charging. And this may also account for the stroboscopic waxing and waning patterns of light oscillation that is not uncommon as plasmoids traverse the thermosphere. If plasmas can turn off the lights and appear in a dark mode, is strongly suspected, meaning that they strongly think that they are capable of doing this as well. They also appear to have the capacity to shed or acquire electrons and to increase or maintain or change their electrical charge or that of different layers via accumulation or shedding of neutrinos and electrons. Via charge separation or substitution, this may enable these life-like plasmoids to engage in complex behaviors as well as accelerate to hyper speeds. Plasmoids in the thermosphere will turn and follow or collide with other plasmoids which hover in place or triangulate their movements so the two intersect. Often they will briefly merge. In addition, those about to collide, and especially after they collide, may split off to form an additional plasma and emit a glowing plasma trail, presumably consisting of emitted electrons and electrified dust that create a trailing particle glow or afterglow. These really are things that a lot of people who have witnessed these UAPs or seen them in footage, it's really a great explanation of what people have seen. We'll get to some pictures, images in just a moment. Plasmas created in the laboratory have a variety of colors, are ionized, and are made up of negatively charged electrons and positively charged ions. The atoms in these laboratories grown plasmas also the atoms in these laboratory grown plasmas also engage in charge separation. That is, they separate from their negatively charged electrons and cease to have a neutral or negative charge. Instead, they become quasi-neutral, such that the overall charge can approach zero. Therefore, plasmas engage in charge separation and charge coupling and can change their charge or the charges of different layers or locations within these layers. And this would enable them to maneuver, accelerate or slow down, hover, make sudden turns, as well as follow and collide and even merge with other plasmas, as well as completely change shape and split off into additional plasmas of opposite charge. This, I think, could be a video all into itself. It's basically trying to explain all the different things that really make up just the amazing things seen in the UAP phenomena and saying, hey, in the laboratory, we've created similar things and we've seen similar kind of actions, and we can possibly explain why it is these plasmas are able to act and move the way they do. Because a lot of times when we're talking about UAPs, we're talking about otherworldly maneuvering. So it makes sense that it would have to be something just kind of so basic as in terms of it being having a pure foundation in physics and chemistry. Assuming these are plasma-like entities and not a completely novel, non-plasmoidic fourth domain of life, then the attraction and repulsion and reciprocal and non-reciprocal interactions between plasmas, including asymmetric acceleration and collisionality, are likely affected by their degree of magnetization and electric charge, which can differ dramatically between plasmas. Presumably, when plasmoids collide, they are engaging in electron and ion transfer and are recharging a waning charge or changing charges, such as charge coupling. Likewise, those plasma that target other plasmoids may be acquiring or shedding electrons, ions, or electrified dust. Observations consistent with the likelihood they are capable of increasing, decreasing, and changing their charge, which in turn would affect maneuverability and enable them to increase or decrease velocity and rapidly alter trajectory. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading the same thing twice. I guess it's good just to kind of reiterate the science, but I apologize. I really could have narrowed that last section down to this one paragraph. Either way, it's good to hear these things, I guess, more than once so we can understand the science behind plasmas. Plasmas also divide and fragment into additional plasma, as documented here. The splitting may be an example of charge separation or an example of DNA or non-DNA alien mitosis meiosis. This is what I find fascinating about this article, is that they really spend a majority of time giving kind of natural explanations for what we see with the UAP phenomena. And then they throw in these things every once in a while, and I'm not sure if this is what they really think. I mean, sure, I could see how they could come to that, but here we have something that's really focusing on the science, and then they just go, boom, speculation. And I love speculating. I think there's nothing wrong with speculating. I think there's scientific speculation, another way of saying hypothesis, and then there's just purely speculation. I think it's fine to do all of the things, the science, the scientific speculating, and the pure speculation. I just don't want them in the same sentence. I can feel like that could be confusing because here you're giving the readers some really good science and then you're just like throwing this in. Or maybe there's more evidence. I don't know. I just find it fascinating. In summary, plasmas will glow as well as oscillate and pulsate with light and can display a range of colors and behaviors, including swarming, aligning, congregating, clustering, crowding, all of which contributes to collective or individualized behavior, including pursuit, head-on collisions, and energy cannibalism, as observed in the thermosphere and documented in this report. It is this propensity to collide and intersect which puts aircrafts at risk if plasma are encountered in the troposphere. One reason to really know and understand a lot about these plasmas is because clearly it does affect pilots just in the day-to-day, but that there can be really catastrophic effects as well. The highly electrically active ionosphere provides the ideal habitat for these energies that radiate and consuming plasmoids. The ionosphere is an energetically active, waxing and waning region of the atmosphere within which swirl ions, particles, and dust that are positively charged with an overall potential of about 250 to 300 kilovolts. However, the ionosphere grows or shrinks in response to thunderstorms, lightning, solar radiation, galactic cosmic rays originating outside the solar system, and precipitation from the Van Allen radiation belts, all of which are a source of negatively charged electrons and positively charged ions. Ultraviolet radiation also causes photoionization, photodissociation of molecules, creating ions, particularly in the atmosphere, which constitutes the major portion of the ionosphere and within which plasmas congregate and engage in complex behaviors. The ionosphere obtains its positive charge primarily from thunderstorms. Thunderstorms, disturbed weather, produce electric fields and cause positive charges to jet upwards towards the ionosphere, whereas negative charges are directed to Earth's surface, a phenomenon known as charge separation, and which may also characterize the cellular layers and mutual behaviors of plasmas, including splitting into additional plasmas. Atmospheric charge separation occurs because the lower atmospheres are weakly conducting and function more as a leaky insulator, thereby enabling AC positive and DC negative charges to attract and pass between the ionosphere and Earth's surface with minimal loss of current. Because it is weakly conducting, the lower atmospheres also provide a corridor through which plasmoids may descend without losing charge and instead acquire charge. In addition to charge separation, There is another electrical phenomenon known as atmospheric electrical coupling, which takes place at or near the speed of light and which links or couples the negative charges of Earth with the positive charge of the ionosphere, also made possible by the weakly conducting stratosphere and troposphere. Electrical coupling may explain why plasmas target, collide, and sometimes merge, whereas the exchange of charges results in repulsion, phenomena which would also enable plasmas to accelerate. It is important to stress that many of these entities engage in behaviors that cannot be explained by automata guided by push-pull electromagnetism. Let's try that sentence again. It is important to stress that many of these entities engage in behaviors that cannot be explained as automata, guided by push-pull electromagnetism. There are pulsating entities that will strike and pass through numerous other plasmoids, but then turn, follow, and pursue a plasmoid coming from a different direction, the latter of which appears to eject a smaller plasmoid that contacts the pursuer, which reverses direction. Almost like they're chasing each other. These complex behaviors can't be explained by plasma physics or electromagnetism. Perhaps the answers would be apparent if NASA did not obscure space shuttle film footage with 4 layers of visual noise and repeatedly shake and change the focus of and turn off the camera. Ooh, there's shade in there for NASA. These complex behaviors and more can be viewed in a 17-minute film of supplementary data consisting of a compilation of NASA Space Shuttle video footage. Except for the section of the film time 1319 to 1330, which employed tracking software, no filters or enhancement software were employed on these NASA films by the authors or their associates. The 4 layers of noise were added by NASA to these films after they were broadcast to Earth, which is why the NASA emblem in the corners of many of the film segments are blurred. Interesting. Might have to check that out in a later video. We have enough to go over. Okay, so now we get to some images. We're going to start with the description here. My goodness. Okay, in the first set, we're going to be looking at the plasmoid, circled in white, materialized or suddenly self-illuminated in the thermosphere and maneuvered itself above a thunderstorm and in the direct path of one of 2 twin hunters, indicated by the red and blue arrows. So basically, it's saying that we have a plasmoid that was attracted to the thunderstorm because it really is almost like a call to them saying, hey, come here, here's an environment that will serve you. And that there were some interactions with others that are called hunters. Hunters, from my understanding, are plasmoids that kind of chase after other plasmoids. Let's take a look. So here we start to see something appear in the white circle. It continues to grow. Then we're going to see something appear by the red arrow on the right-hand side of this image right here. That is then going to start, quote unquote, hunting this plasmoid that appeared earlier. Then we seem to see another one appear almost in the same area, and that it is going to also then start to head towards the other plasmoid, or maybe it's trying to get to the area of the thunderstorm as well. This is a really magnified kind of image of B, the hunter, and it is a pretty neat looking plasma there. Okay, now let's go back and see what else we have. The globular plasmoid, circle in white, materialized, flew above a thunderstorm where it hovered directly in the path of a red arrow hunter that pierces and exits multiple plasmas until striking the globular plasmoid. So again, we're taking a kind of different look at it here. We have these two hunters that were going towards the initial plasmoid that showed up in the footage. As it is coming in and essentially merging, is my understanding, we have a kind of in-depth look of what it looks like. Now, this has been enhanced, but it was done so in order to kind of be able to tell the differences in the layers. And it kind of looks just like a cell membrane here, almost as if it has like a nucleus in the center. It's pretty interesting stuff. So we've talked a lot about how thunderstorms are really creating the necessary atmosphere for plasmoids to form and likely contributes to the necessary kind of charges of the different layers of the atmosphere that allow these plasmoids or UAPs to really move in non-terrestrial manners. Now, lightning is also plasma. This is science fact that can produce or trigger the formation of multiple transient plasma. Moreover, a single lightning bolt can produce up to a billion joules of energy and anywhere from 130 million volts to 1.3 billion volts of upward directed positive current. My goodness, that's a lot. It is shocking that anybody can get hit by lightning and survive. That being said, I absolutely love lightning storms. And honestly, I could go outside more, but for some reason, when there's a lightning storm, it just like calls me out there. I just love the smell and the feel and the way it looks. It's very interesting. Okay, so then it says it is predictable that lightning, which is plasma, would be very attractive to and would produce plasmas. Facts make sense. Each day, at least 1,000 thunderstorms rage over Earth, and approximately 2,000 thunderstorms are happening at the same time around the globe. These storms of lightning continuously release positive charges into the upper atmosphere and negative and positive charges towards the Earth's ocean and land masses. So again, just really saying that, hey, it makes sense that we are seeing these things everywhere because we have a lot of conditions here on Earth that really support the creation of plasmas and plasmoids. Thunderclouds consist of both positive and negative charges. These currents, in turn, would attract plasmas with a negative charge and those with a positive charge. Specifically, as thunderclouds and storms develop, complex microphysical processes cause the buildup of reservoirs of positive electric charge in the upper regions of the cloud and reservoirs of negative charge at the lower portions, such that a vertical electric dipole is formed. Fascinating. I would honestly love to learn much more about the science here. I did do some basic research last night, and it's just fascinating stuff. Because thunderclouds generate potential differences exceeding 100 megavolts between the positive charges at their tops and the negative charges near their bottoms, they serve as both a DC and an AC battery slash generator that continually recharges the global electric circuit maintained between the ionosphere and lower atmospheres, the land masses, and the oceans. Moreover, the thundercloud's DC battery creates a series of horizontal charge fields above the cloud, basically creating an all roads lead to Rome multi-pathway that plasmoids may traverse as they fly toward and then descend into a thunderstorm. By contrast, the AC generator at the bottom creates vertical charge fields leading downward to a dozen meters above the ground and ocean, and thus providing yet another pathway to the lower atmosphere and the surface. However, in so doing, the coupling of a downward charge and the positive charge in the lower atmosphere may result in a plasmoid collision that also produce transient plasmas, also known as ball lightning, likely a term that many of you are familiar with. Thunderstorms also appear to provide an electrically recharging way station for plasmoids descending from the ionosphere, mesosphere, and stratosphere to the positively charged lower atmosphere, the troposphere, and the oceans of Earth. So, again, thunderstorms are really just allowing the conditions to exist here for these kind of amazing visual phenomena. So this section is fairly important in the sense that it's trying to talk about, hey, we actually still see a lot of the same conditions, even when it's just fair weather. It doesn't have to be super stormy to really have the correct conditions for plasmas to form. We'll focus in on this one section. Thus, for over an hour or more, the interior positive charge extends well beyond the lifetime of the thunderstorm and persists even during fair weather conditions and may infiltrate and charge distant areas that are otherwise cloudless. And this is due to the fact that the stratosphere and especially the troposphere act as non-conducting insulators and maintain a positive charge. In addition, fair weather clouds, including those fluffy, white, and pillow-shaped, and in particularly those that are layered, are also electrically charged and contribute to the GEC. Such clouds are known to cover about 30% of the planet at any one time. Earth's lower atmosphere, above much of the planet, is therefore electrically charged. This is important to point out because I think many people could say, well, it's great. Sure, it makes sense why you would see these plasmoids in areas of thunderstorms. I can get behind kind of the chemistry and the science that are associated with those areas. But what about all the people who see these type of phenomena with clear skies or, with white fluffy clouds? How do you explain that? Well, here they're trying to do so. They're saying that, hey, conditions continue to exist for a long time. And because of the way that our kind of atmosphere is structured, we can really kind of spread that charge out over long distances. So it doesn't even have to be a thunderstorm in an area or an area that really gets them really ever in order to be affected kind of by these electromagnetic conditions that are produced elsewhere. Plasmoids filmed by 10 shuttle missions are attracted to electromagnetic activity and the positive charges at the top of thunder clouds and positively charged lightning. Therefore, it can be predicted that plasmas would be observed not only during disturbed weather conditions, but on foggy, cloudy, humid, and as well as on cloudless fair weather days due to the attractive influences of this positively charged environment. Okay, multiple plasmoids alone and in pairs arrive off camera and approach at different velocities and descend into powerful thunderstorms. It's going to be the next section we're going to look at here. Let's take a look. So first we see, basically two different plasmoids kind of as the images progress, we're starting to see more pop into view. Pretty neat. I can't imagine the time it took to get all these images, so thank you again. Highly recommend that everybody check this article out for themselves. Next, a single thermosphere plasma soaring above and descending into a thunderstorm. So here we have the plasmoid circled in white, and we will see it descending into a thunderstorm. I really like the magnified and just like colored image of this. It's absolutely beautiful. It really makes me think of all the different kind of pictures of orbs we see floating around right now, especially with all the drone drama and different things that people are capturing. And yes, I know some of them are stars, planets, and the like. It's all interesting nonetheless. Plasmoid materializing and descending into a thunderstorm. We're going to have one show up out of nowhere. That's what all the arrows are pointing to. Then it's going to be circled in red. It has materialized into quite a solid looking object. Then it is going to enter an area of a thunderstorm. I have a hard time telling where the thunderstorm is, so I'm just going to take their word for it. Very cool. Next set of images, a plasmoid materializes and descends into the storm and the lower atmosphere. So here we're going to have a plasmoid. I guess it's right here where it is, yep, materializing, and then it's like scooting over here. Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah, that looks very crazy. I mean, perhaps it's in a shadow here, but it really does look almost like a snake right there and like it's navigating somewhere. Okay, plasmoids materializing or suddenly self-illuminating above a thunderstorm. So here we're going to be seeing in the red circle a plasmoid showing up, becoming more solid-like or lifelike, and then supposedly descends or self-illuminates above a thunderstorm. Maybe it's using all that electric energy from the thunderstorm to really give it the necessary energy to say, hey, look at me. Okay, plasmoid materialize above thunderstorm. Target same plasma. Engage in complex interactions. So we have several different plasmoids that are going to start moving around and interacting with one another. We can see here where there's these arrows is showing really a fast movement of a plasmoid just zipping through space and kind of heading straight for the other ones, or I guess right past this one. Then we're going to have what looks to be almost like a birthing of a plasmoid. Let's take a look at the description. Okay, plasmoid 1, red circle, targets, collides, and merges with plasma 2. Plasmoid 3 materializes after a hypervelocity hunter strikes numerous plasmas. Plasmoid 3 follows and also collides/merges with plasma 2. As documented, the white box plasma number 3 materialized and followed the red circle plasma number 4, intersecting the same number 2 plasma that red circle had already penetrated. The red and white come close together, but white continues to just above the thunderstorm. Complicated. I'll let you just maybe take a screenshot and reference that later. So here it looks to me, and maybe this is exactly what it says, that we have some separation or birthing of plasmas. We have some fast motion. Then I think this is here what we're talking about, the collision. I apologize if I'm getting this all wrong. It is not my intent. It just would be nice to have, I guess, some of the descriptions kind of not so, I guess, spaced apart. Have a couple of images, tell me what's going on. Otherwise, it's just hard to go back and forth. Very neat findings here. Have like the separation of plasmas, plasmoids. We really see some interactions here. Very neat. Now we're going to take a look at the thermosphere plasmoids that form rings, cones, jellyfish, sprites, and elves. So again, they've really kind of pointed out that when we see some of these images here, that there has been some altering, but it's really done only to show the distinct layers that are present. Nothing beyond that is altered. I have to say, this looks really cool. This is kind of my favorite part of all the images, is just showing these layers and really how it is shaped and formed like things that, we have around us and we're familiar with, such as cells. This definitely looks kind of like a membrane or a cell wall. Perhaps this could be a nucleus or nucleoid. It's just really interesting to see this kind of self-assimilating electrical kind of state of matter that on its own, whether or not it's living or not living, that on its own, it can form shapes that resemble living cells. That by itself is super cool. Other cool images. Plasmoids in the thermosphere take a variety of forms and change shape, resembling clouds, rings, cones, and multiple plasmas joined together. If there is a representative of a fourth domain of life, then some may represent distinct species. Well, that is interesting. I can see why people would correspond this to a domain of life, because as you can see in the images right here, it really is symbolic of kind of the diagrams we have already of life. So I can understand how people could make the jump. Transient luminous plasmas. This is so beautiful. So one of the things I really enjoy doing when I'm not reading scientific stuff, and I know this may be kind of on the edge there, but one of the things I really enjoy doing is kind of going down what I call story time. I like to listen to things that are, in a sense, the opposite of science, because it really allows or engages the other side of my brain and allows me to relax that kind of analytical side. I also think it's important because it really helps, I guess, in being creative. And I think it's important in science to be creative, to ask those kind of next level questions and to really help you see connections between fields of science that are already there. So many times, just not just in science, but in medicine, everything has become so specialized that a lot of times the connections between fields aren't being made. So anyhow, the point being, I really enjoy hearing about mythology and how the ancients used to live, because it really does. I guess I'm thinking about science because I'm fascinated and just enamored by these stories of, spirits and fairies and all these amazing things that if you were living back in that time, how else would you describe it? We are lucky and in a way unlucky to understand the science behind all these truly mesmerizing and beautiful phenomena that exist all around us. Um, so I just enjoy hearing how people interpret these things in, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, even for some people, and just the way we're able to kind of view it now. In a sense, it's sad that the magic behind all of it has been turned into science, but I also really love it because it explains a lot. And trust me, there are currently many, many questions that science has yet to explain that are just as magical as elves and sprites. Okay, back to the beautiful images. So here I like this image because it's showing the different layers, the ionosphere, mesosphere, and so on. And it's really showing how we can have different things at different levels and how the plasmas tend to be shaped, colored, and formed at different, areas, because it's these different layers that are going to have different kind of electromagnetic environments that will essentially birth these plasmas. Great image. Wish it was a little clearer, but really well done image. Okay, now we're doing shape-shifting ring-shaped plasmoid filmed above the ocean. This is a very interesting picture. It'd be nice if it was a bit clearer. But hey, I understand that if these are all plasmas, then they would affect the ability for electronics to work. So makes sense. So basically, this section is just talking about lightning over land versus sea and talking about the different environments that would be created. Okay, lightning is a plasma that produces transient plasmas that linger near the ground and lower atmosphere, and those that rocket towards the ionosphere. Whereas plasmas of the ionosphere will descend into thunderstorms, colorful transient plasmas will erupt from thunderstorms and jet at incredible velocities through the stratosphere, mesosphere, and thermosphere, with some taking shape 50 to 90 kilometers above Earth, including those resembling jellyfish, clouds, streaks, flashes, donuts, stars, and rapidly expanding rings of light. Astronauts have also reported that three objects, two ring-shaped, approached and were hovering near their space shuttle. These upward-directed transient cold plasmas are not rare events, but are produced on average one every second and are commonly referred to as elves, sprites, and pixies in the scientific literature. Moreover, these upward-directed plasma may intersect plasmas of the ionosphere. And based on reports by astronauts, they have penetrated and flashed through spaceships, the MIR, the space shuttles, and ISS. For example, sprites are believed to form during intense positive cloud-to-ground lightning and propagate visible tendrils downward and upward, whereas elves likely form during an interaction between the propagating electromagnetic lightning pulse and the ions of the ionosphere. Other cold plasmas produced by lightning storms have been referred to as blue jets, gigantic jets, blue sprites, blue starters, pixies, and so on. Collectively, these particular plasmas have been referred to as transient luminous events, which is the collective name given to a wide variety of optical emissions and which have been studied from the ground and via balloons, aircraft, the space shuttles, the ISS, and orbiting satellites. For example, 2 weeks before it exploded re-entry in 2003, the crew of the Space Shuttle Columbia observed an intense flash of red light that continued to glow in the ionosphere despite the fact that no thunderstorms were observed down below. Possibly this is because gravity waves, meteors, volcanoes, seismic events, and even dust storms are believed to modify the local electrical properties of the mesosphere and ionosphere, all of which can cause the formation of plasmas with a variety of shapes that engage in different behaviors. TLEs are associated with whistlers. Whistlers whistle and are centered above intense thunderstorm activity, but pass through the ionosphere along geomagnetic field lines to the opposite hemisphere and into deep space. Whistlers may alert plasmas to the location of a particularly intense electrical storms. So, particularly intense electric storm. Basically saying it's like a signal that comes out from these intense electrical storms saying, hey, if you want to collect some electrical energy, I guess, from me, here I am. Like a call out to these plasmoids, I think is what it's trying to get across. TLEs, along with whistlers from lightning, trigger particle wave interactions and collisions with energetic electrons, and not only contribute to the ionization of the mesosphere and thermosphere, but can affect spacecraft and satellites, even entering and exiting spacecraft before radiating out into deep space. Okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to have to skip some parts. Let me know if you want me to go back. A lot of this is really neat anecdotal information, people who've had very kind of personal experiences of plasmoids. We're going to quickly touch on the numerous credible reports documenting that plasmas shaped like donuts, spheres, and even jellyfish can pass through metal, plastic, wood, windows, and brick walls over 40 centimeters thick and enter home, businesses, and the cockpit of aircraft, sometimes burning or shocking those inside and or damaging power plants, electrical circuits, and short-circuiting television sets, radios, junction boxes, and other electrical devices. You know, this has been really kind of talked about to a certain degree in terms of ball lightning. I know I've heard stories about this for quite some time. It's interesting to have it come into this article. Astronauts, including the first and second man to walk on the moon, have reported seeing flashes of colored light that had entered their sealed craft and which had various shapes. According to Buzz Aldrin, something was zapping through the cabin. I observed what I thought were little flashes inside the cabin. I was able to see double flashes at points separated by maybe a foot. At other times, I could see a line with no direction of motion. Neil Armstrong also admitted that he'd seen some light that had flashed inside the cabin and that his observations were similar to those of Buzz Aldrin. The crew of Apollo 12 through 17 also observed light flashes inside the cabin that were blue, red, white, and shaped like stars or clouds or streaks. Nor were these illusions, hallucinations, or due to cosmic or gamma rays affecting their eyes, because they were not observed when astronauts closed their eyes or were wearing blindfolds. For example, lunar module pilot Harrison Schmitt reported that inside his craft, we had light flashes just about continuously during the whole flight. And he had seen another flash on the lunar surface during his moonwalk. Amazing. Some things there that I had never heard before. Let's see. Next, we are going to talk about effects of UFO, UAP, and ball lightning plasmas, behavior types, hallucinations, and confusion. I just want to say before we get into this section that it really makes sense that based on our research of kind of how different electromagnetic kind of fields can affect humans and their brain states, then it makes sense that if these are what they say they are, that we would be affected in similar ways to those they have tested in certain scientific settings. So collectively, the diverse array of plasmoids that form in the lower atmosphere have sometimes been referred to as ball lightning, and which may have multiple shapes, colors, and forms that may endure from a few seconds to several dozen minutes before vanishing. In this report, we provide evidence of what is most likely ball lightning hovering over the ocean. I would agree with you. You have done that. Broadly considered, there are several major loosely defined categories of ball lightning, which is the collective term for a variety of illuminated plasmas that appear in the lower atmosphere. So now it's just basically talking about the different kinds. For example, there's the ball of lightning that appears after a bolt strikes a pole tree or the ground, and which kicks up dust and debris that, along with various gases, are incorporated within a plasma that is illuminated and which may be round or oval in shape. A second category is observed above dust storms and prior to and after earthquakes and during volcanic eruptions. The third category is a ball of light that floats in the air at various distances above ground, sometimes as high as the stratosphere, and which emits beams of light. Another category includes luminous globes that lead or follow a bolt of lightning, and that may bounce against the ground or telephone poles and electric cables. A fifth category includes those that travel atop and along power lines and fences. Then there are those that enter or appear inside buildings, homes, and airplanes that are aloof. In each instance, the plasmoid may move randomly, erratically, sometimes very rapidly or slowly, but most often horizontally at relatively slow velocities and then suddenly vanish or may explode as it disappears. So it's really just listing the types of ball lightning that we have categorized here on Earth, also mentioning that they really do move kind of differently than those that we see um, plasmoids do. Some observers have detected an odor resembling ozone, sulfur, and nitrogen dioxide in the vicinity of these plasmas. I thought this is really interesting. It made me think of some of the stories of lights with kind of the sulfur smells and being associated with demons. And I thought, hey, maybe this could be what they were experiencing. They saw a ball of light. They experienced electrical phenomena that maybe made them interpret what they were seeing or the reality around them differently. And they smelt the smell of sulfur, which does not smell good. Anyhow, some believe the ball plasma is cold because they feel no heat when it gets near their body. However, there are also anecdotal reports of ball plasma melting soil, evaporating large volumes of water, and of people suffering severe burns or a painful electric shock. In addition, power outages have also been attributed to these balls of plasma. Some of those who have encountered ball lightning also report being confused, disorientated, and even experiencing visual illusions and hallucinations or suffering from nightmares. In one instance, hundreds of those who observed first one in one instance, hundreds of those who observed first one, then a second ball of lightning reported feeling disorientated not only during but for several minutes after the ball disappeared, as documented in the following account. You can read this if you would like. I'm going to skip over some of these accounts. But again, this makes sense. Whether or not they're kind of electrical, magnetic, I guess, beingness that they are, whether or not that actually directly affects humans is almost irrelevant. I think anytime we see something that is so unexpected, so kind of reality shattering, of course, we're going to be left feeling confused, disoriented, and perhaps having hallucinations. I mean, it just makes sense. And I think we can think of some times when we've just experienced something so just out of this world or unexpected that we have to take some time to compose ourselves and kind of come back to reality again. In October of 1994, at around 8:30 p.m., approximately 1,000 of the town's 4,000 residents saw a very large red-orange colored ball of fire moving at a very low altitude directly towards them. It appeared to be a fiery orange, yellow, white color, possibly rectangular or spherical in cross-section, depending on the observer. And from the side, it appeared to be a spherical yellow-white light pulsing up and down in light intensity, as captured on video. Several of the observers, being some 200 meters directly below it by now, reported that it was an intense spherical ball of orange-red fire, with the fire swirling in a spiral pattern and the flames disappearing internally upward into a central black hole or void within the spherical mass of flames. Another observer also described it as like a moving plasma ball in a local space-time warp around a central black hole. The fireball had no tail and made no noise at all. It was described as a sort of implosion ball of flames, with all the fire or flames originating in a local space outside the fiery sphere-like form, the flames being sucked into the center where they disappeared. Very interesting description. Can almost picture it. So there's a lot of other just descriptions about what this kind of town experienced. Many of the residents also admitted to feeling confused and disorientated. Of course, that makes sense. So this image is a reproduction of what was described, and the images on the left are just an artistic rendering of what these residents encountered. And it's pretty amazing. There are a lot of historical accounts similar to this. So plasmoids appear to be electromagnetic entities that emit electrical charges and energetic electrons. Makes sense. I think we've covered that. Anecdotal reports claim that these plasmoids, also known as UAPs, can cause nightmares, confusions, feelings of disorientation, and induce illusions and hallucinations, presumably due to the effects of electromagnetic radiation having adverse neurological effects, possibly affecting the temporal lobes and hippocampus and amygdala in particular. In one instance, nearly 1,000 residents experienced strange time-space mind distortion effects that were in operation, emanating from the fireballs, such that confusion reigned immediately during and after the sighting. However, in many anecdotal reports, couples and entire families have also reported not just seeing, but taking a picture of a UFO that had landed. But when these photos are developed, there is no UFO and no aliens, sometimes only a bright light. At the other extreme are the numerous cases of individual reporting or remembering or dreaming about having been abducted by aliens. As noted, nightmares after encounters with plasmas are not uncommon, and which raises the possibility: is the memory of an abduction actually based on a dream, a nightmare, or the product of an electromagnetically induced hallucination caused by exposure to a plasma? I really find this one paragraph absolutely fascinating, and I think it's worthy of a whole episode. If you think so as well, let me know in the comments below. But in short, I think it is completely plausible to say that there are many phenomena, not just the kind of UFO phenomena, that really can be explained by something having a kind of direct effect on the brain that basically alters the way that we interact or interpret reality, a false reality for a short period of time. I think it's definitely possible. I think this also explains a lot of the kind of different worlds that are involved in a lot of the kind of DMT states that are kind of really popular these days and that are discussed in a lot of kind of online or scientific forums. I find just the way the brain works and how people interpret reality extremely interesting. I have not had a personal experience with a UAP, UFO, or DMT, but I find how people deal with these experiences interesting nonetheless. Okay, experiments have demonstrated that exposure to electromagnetic fields can produce a diverse range of hallucinatory phenomena, including the hearing of voices and the perception of full-blown demonic or ghostly apparitions. Persinger and colleagues have repeatedly induced anomalous hallucinatory experiences and otherworldly phenomena via the application of complex magnetic fields to the temporal region of the skull, whereas Frey, employing power densities as low as 400 microwatts per meter squared, was also able to produce voices and a variety of sounds, even in subjects completely deaf. This is also worthy of its own episode. Remind me that I said this in the comments below, please, because I find so many things interesting that I'll probably forget about this. But this is a really cool thing to get farther into. Electromagnetic pulses can also cause dizziness, vomiting, confusion, disorientation, memory loss, the perception of unpleasant odors, dissociative experiences such as floating above the body, or cause those affected to fall asleep and have nightmares, or conversely make them unable to sleep so that they begin to hallucinate. Basically, if it's weird, we're going to say it's from an EM, an electromagnetic pulse, I guess. Therefore, based on anecdotal and experimental studies, there is now considerable evidence that exposure to intense electromagnetic fields and bright stroboscopic pulsating lights, such as those associated with plasmas, can induce complex hallucinations of ghost like and demonic forms or horrific nightmares that, upon recall or following hypnosis, might later be interpreted as alien abductions. This is not to say that all claims of abduction should be dismissed as due to an electromagnetically or stroboscopic induced hallucination, but rather exposure to plasmas radiating high levels of electromagnetic activity can alter perceptions of reality. Very interesting. Again, Arnold, who coined the term flying saucers, believed that these arrays of bright, shape shifting lights and forms had somehow invaded his thoughts and could read his mind. Okay, 19th century encounter with ball lightning. These encounters generally cause shock, confusion, disorientation, terror, and later sleep disturbance and nightmares. We're going to have picture time. Let me get it bigger here for you. Examples of oscillating, stroboscopic, waxing, pulsating plasma illumination in the thermosphere. Say that 5 times fast or just once, I guess. These behaviors and more can be viewed in a 17-minute film consisting of a compilation of NASA Space Shuttle. I would be open to watching this kind of live together at a later date and time if there's people who are interested. Again, I'm making the assumption that I'm kind of doing this for myself because I find it interesting and that I am talking to the black hole of YouTube. But hopefully it will reach some of you and you'll find this interesting. This pulsating plasmoid emerged in the thermosphere from the clouds below and approached the space shuttle. Imagine what it's like being on the space shuttle. I mean, just the experience of being in space is like mind-blowing enough, let alone having to live practically in isolation in a box. Then you throw just like these like reality busting experiences in all the time. I mean, I just couldn't even imagine. Plasmas have invaded the cockpit of airplanes. The lower atmospheric transient luminous phenomena, like the sprites, elves, and blue jets of the upper atmosphere, are short lived, display a diversity of sizes and colors, and may appear as ellipsoids, cylinders, and disks that radiate beams of light and high frequency radio emission. Not uncommonly, they occur in pairs, triplets, or follow one another, but do not engage in complex behaviors. Like those of the upper atmosphere which have entered spacecraft, plasmas in the lower atmosphere pass through metal, plastic, glass, and aluminum and entered aircraft cockpits. Cockpits are preferred mode of plasma entry, presumably because, in contrast to the high electric fields that exist on this portion of the aircraft, the cockpit windows are large and lack any electrical shielding. So it's saying, hey, we think that these things, up high and down lower in our atmosphere, that they are the same things. They act similarly. They behave, a little bit differently, but the same. And they have a similar relationship to kind of these crafts, to spaceships as well as to airplanes. Now, I've actually heard of these experiences years ago. I just could not imagine, as if flying isn't like nerve-wracking enough. Now we have like balls of light coming in. So let me know if you want me to go through any of these chapters in just complete detail. Otherwise, I'm going to skip through some of this. Presumably, a plasma may pass through a portal or window that appear inside due to the accumulation of atmospheric ions on the isolating inside surface of the craft. If the interior collects a surface charge that can produce electric fields which are sufficient to sustain an electric discharge, This may create a plasma that slowly floats or begins zapping around inside amongst the crew and passengers. I just could not imagine. No, thank you. So then it goes into some stories of just that happening. Okay, now we have some images of plasmoids targeting, colliding, piercing, turning, and following. And I just want to congratulate you. We are halfway there. Luckily, the last several pages are of references, so yay for that. We're going to do it. Stick with me to the end. So this is just showing a lot of different interactions between different plasmoids and doing what was described: targeting, colliding, piercing, turning, and following. Pretty amazing stuff. Same thing here: plasmas, targeting, colliding, and piercing. Sorry, I had to take a sip. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Mouth is getting dry from all this talking. Wow, that looks very busy. Things are just zipping and moving around everywhere. Pretty fascinating. You can just really see when they're in motion, just this zipping about. It really is almost like a changing organism here where things are just kind of coming in and out of being, moving around. Hypervelocity hunters in the thermosphere above a thunderstorm. So we're going to see here things moving very quickly across the frame, the image here. Same thing being shown in these images. These are just kind of marking how fast it's moving. Hypervelocity plasmoid hunters in the thermosphere. Pretty fascinating. These, unfortunately, are very blurry, but that is an elongated hunter strikes and intersects numerous plasmoids hovering above a thunderstorm. And at the bottom row, pulsating, shrinking, expanding, wiggling like a worm or snake as it hunts. Yeah, that's interesting. I was mentioning in an earlier photograph that it almost looks like a worm or a snake and is moving. At least it appears to be moving like one. So although they are blurry, we can imagine, I guess, what's being shown. And very interesting. Example of plasmas colliding, merging, spitting apart. I'm guessing that is supposed to be splitting. I will say that I mispronounce words obviously often, and it's hard saying a lot of these large scientific words for hours on end. But some of the writing could be a little bit better, makes it kind of hard to get right the first time. That being said, I think it's still a very fascinating article. I mean, do you think they mean spitting apart? I don't know. You let me know, comments below. Okay, we have lots of movement going on here. A plasmoid here, plasmoid there, plasmoid everywhere. These are neat images. You know, these are my favorite by now. I love just how, I look at that and I instantly, maybe not in this one, I see something else in that image, but let's go with this one. I instantly see a cell. I think that is so cool. Detailed analysis of colliding, merging, and separation, which could be likened to a charge coupling between plasmoids of opposite charges, followed by charge separation as one or both reverse charge, such that both are positive or both negative, resulting in repulsion. Really makes sense. Ooh, speculation. When I'm not working in a very mainstream manner, when I'm being a professor, which I just keep it very mainstream, I do enjoy looking at speculation. I find it such a interesting way to day just gripped by science, because it's really taking the foundation of science and being like, what does this mean? What could it mean? It's just a fun area and topic. Okay, let's switch things around here just a little bit. Lightning. I guess when I was going through this last night, I did skip over. I guess I shouldn't say I read all 109 pages. I read most of it, but I did skip over a lot of the kind of anecdotal stories, because I was really wanting to focus a lot on the science. But I might have to do another video on some of the stories, because these are very well-known stories. And I did not realize that as I was going through this, that we have Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which is a very interesting conversation, especially currently, right? For those of you who know, you know. So we might have to come back and go through. Oh, let's just read it now. Okay, on March 8th, 2014, Boeing 777 Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 inexplicably ceased to communicate with air traffic controllers and disappeared from air control radar 39 minutes after leaving Kuala Lumpur en route to Beijing, but then flew for hours off course before disappearing from radar. The pilot's last message was "Good night, Malaysian 370. Minutes later, the plane's transponder, a communication system that transmits the plane's location to air traffic control, shut down. Military radar and satellite systems, however, continue to track the plane, which appeared to turn 180 degrees and continue to fly for hours until it vanished, presumably crashing into the ocean when it ran out of fuel. The Boeing 777, like all commercial aircraft since 2001, had an armored cockpit that can resist attacks and small arms fire from outside the cockpit, and an electronic locking mechanism, so it is kept secure during flight. To speculate, if a plasma were to enter the cockpit through the cockpit windows but remain sealed within the cockpit, might this explain why the transponder failed and why the plane disappeared from all but military radar and satellite tracking devices? Might both pilots have been confused, disorientated, mesmerized, or caused to fall asleep by electromagnetic radiation emitted by a plasma locked within the cockpit? To date, there has been no explanation for what happened or what became a Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, other than speculation by Malaysian authorities that unknown interference occurred. I will leave it up to you to do your own research and see what you find out about this. I think it's one of those fascinating topics, because a lot of people have different opinions, and you kind of learn about different areas of science because they're trying to prove their opinion based on the available science. That being said, of course, there's one that do just pure speculation. So this little section talks about UAPs over the ocean, which makes sense because we have very similar electromagnetic circumstances that do allow for these plasmoids to develop. Touches briefly about Navy Commander David Fravor, who testified before a special U.S. Congressional Committee, and where he reported seeing on radar multiple anomalous aerial vehicles. So if you'd like, you can read more about this. I have a feeling that most of you who are watching this are fairly familiar with a majority of these different sightings and reports. If this is your first time kind of looking into this topic, I highly recommend getting a copy of this article and just really taking the time to read it, and then going online and doing your own fact checking. And I think what you would find would surprise you. Okay, we're going to move forward to some images. UAP plasma passes over Chicago towards East Coast, descends towards Atlantic Ocean. This is hitting a little too close to home during this month of drone drama, don't you think? Oh, who knows what's going on there? What I do like about all the drone drama is that everyone is looking up into the night sky, and I think it's great. We should all be outside more, especially at night. Really take in just the beauty of nature and all that surrounds us. This pulsating object in the thermosphere flew over Chicago and continued towards the East Coast and then descended downward toward the Atlantic Ocean. It's interesting how it just kind of gets brighter, becomes more distinct, kind of changes there. Freeze frame of white glowing object filmed by Command Center of the USS Omaha in July of 2019 off the coast of San Diego, California. The object is glowing, radiating, and there is a downward direct fog-like optic directed downward as well to the left. Additional analysis indicates the object may have a nucleus or that it consists of layers that radiate different levels of light. Based on viewing of the film footage posted online, the object may have descended into the sea or it may have vanished as it made contact with the ocean surface. Very interesting images. The ocean can develop a positive charge and attract plasma UAP. Just kind of reiterating what I feel that it's already proved in this article so far. So it's really saying, again, that it makes sense that we see these UAPs near the ocean, what looks like it's coming in and out of the ocean, and so on. Shapeshifter replicon filmed by U.S. Customs in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Let's see, are we going to get into this one too? Okay, let's just do it. On April 25th, 2013, at approximately 9:20 p.m., a U.S. Customs and Border Protection DC-8 aircraft using thermal imaging filmed an ocean skimming UAP at least a dozen meters above a runway at Rafael Hernandez Airport, and which continued over the ocean off the coast of Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Although we do not have data for the evening of the 25th, the video depicts thick fog and low clouds, whereas according to timeanddate.com, the temperature at 6 p.m. ranged from 81 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit, barometer at 29.98, which is a normal range, and humidity at 65% to 74%, which indicates considerable hot, muggy moisture in the air, thereby increasing electrical current and conductivity, and which is associated with development of electrically charged cumulonimbus clouds that produce lightning. Based on repeated viewing of this 3-minute film provided to the authors, it is obvious the object's movements are erratic with sudden turns, dips, and lifts, making it impossible to determine its actual velocity. It also appeared to repeatedly dip beneath the waves, and twice it split apart. As documented in this report, the film was analyzed employing Apple Final Cut Pro, which is able to make up to 10 freeze frames for every second. one frame per 100 milliseconds. Nearly 200 freeze frames were eventually obtained, one for approximately every second, and often two or more per second. The freeze frames reveal that the object was rapidly, dramatically, and continuously changing its size and shape every second, and often in less than a second, and it repeatedly split into separate parts. Detailed optics analysis of approximately 130 freeze frames using anti-blur photar image filters and enhancement software verifies, as documented in figures 28 through 32, that the object moved erratically, rapidly, and continually changed shape. This shape shifter repeatedly took the shape of a blob or clouds, a spiral, or formed a ring and repeatedly split apart, forming secondary, oddly shaped forms that would sometimes remain temporarily attached and then detached and flew in front or above or behind the primary object before disappearing, thus indicating that these second objects could not have been a shadow or reflection on the ocean surface. Very interesting. At times, the nucleus became apparent, within which sometimes 3 to 4 orbs could be viewed, figure 32. It is possible one or more of these internal orbs split off to form secondary UAPs, which often included internal or exterior shapes that were orb-like. As to these internal orbs in laboratory experiments, spherical cloud, blob, and donut-shaped plasmoids were also continually changing their appearance and color, and within which round glowing balls repeatedly flared up inside. Skip down a little bit. Based on these freeze frames, a sample of which are presented here, it is obvious the object continuously changes shape and sometimes has an internal nucleus or voids. No obvious means of propulsion, is self-illuminated, and splits off into secondary objects. It is not a bird or a drone and cannot be made of metal, plastic, or alloy unless of extraterrestrial origin and based on technologies unknown on Earth. Yet another possibility is that the object is a transdimensional, 5-dimensional entity because it exists in the 5th dimension and also appeared in the 4th dimension of our space-time continuum. It appeared to constantly change as different parts become visible in our 4 dimensions. In brief, the existence of a 5th dimension, also known as the Kaluza-Klein theory, could explain how gravity is linked to the electromagnetism when no link is apparent in our 4th dimensional universe. Moreover, we can't see the 5th dimension because it exists in a higher plane of space than the one we occupy, but which nevertheless may be curled up within or conversely surround our 4 dimensions, like a cylinder or forming a circle. The 5th dimension is believed to be microscopic, in which case the radius of the circular dimension might be 23 times the Planck length, which in turn is of the order of 10 to 33 centimeters, but which may serve to link together the 4 dimensions of our existence, just as thunderstorms provide an electromagnetic link between the ionosphere and Earth. I feel like there's a typo here in a sentence. I might have to look into that later. But there are some really interesting videos just talking about how if you were to observe a dimension higher than you, how it would appear and how often it would potentially come across as if it were a UAP. Tons of videos on that, so you should check them out. Plus, it's just a fun little thought experiment. This hypothetical hole may have been viewed by nearly 1,000 residents of, I guess I should have read the paragraph before, or maybe it was higher up. Well, there's a story about a hypothetical hole that may have been viewed by nearly 1,000 residents of Western Australia town of Tom Price as a huge ball of plasma floated downwards towards them. As detailed by Mason, it was an intense spherical ball of orange-red fire, with the fire swirling in a spiral pattern and the flames disappearing internally upward into a central black hole or void within the spherical mass of flames. Another observer also described it as like a moving plasma ball in a local space time warp around a central black hole. I think we have seen many images through time that have really kind of captured this idea. I'm sure we'll see some historical images in just a moment. A swirling vortex is not an uncommon characteristic of ball lightning, whereas a hole or void may have been a nucleus, which is a common attribute of plasma, as documented in this and an earlier report, and as reported by Arnold when he observed flying saucers in 1947 with a pulsating thing in the middle of them. However, it is also possible that the hole observed by the residents of Tom Price may be a small black hole that leads to and from the fifth to our four dimensions. And this may account for the shape-shifting appearance of the object filmed by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection DHC-8. For example, if a five-dimensional entity from the fifth dimension were to appear in our fourth dimension, observers might view it as continually changing shape because they can only perceive three of its dimensions as it moves through time. And this may also explain why the object filmed by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection DHC-8 appears to continually change and split off as it moves, because we can only view different parts, but not the object as a whole. Again, I would look up online, just really discussing what it would be like if we were to see the dimension above us, and just really look at the different dimensions and how it would be viewed from other dimensions. Freeze frame of photos of a shifting shape or a shape-shifting UAP from a 3-minute film, the one that was discussed above. So here we have a UAP over the coast of Puerto Rico that is really just changing its shape and splitting into multiple, is what it appears to us. Now, if you've seen the videos where it's talking about what we would see in this dimension, if we were seeing the dimension above, it would appear kind of like this. We would see parts of it, but never the whole thing. So I can see where they're getting that based on these images. Now we're going to be taking a closer look where it's kind of splitting into additional UAPs. Really, the world we live in is so interesting and amazing. Love it. Shape-shifting UAPs, voids, and nucleus. Okay, now that one just looks like an eye right there. Not interesting. Examples of nucleuses, voids within shape-shifting UAP, freeze frames produced via Final Cut Pro. Ovals inside nucleus voids of shape-shifting UAPs. Freeze frames produced and magnified 1,600 times. Although the glowing oval form could be construed as ganglia, similar glowing ovals have been observed in plasmas generated experimentally. That's cool. I want to see a video of that. Ooh, colorful. Let's see, what are we going to be looking at? Here are examples of oval ganglia nerve net-like, typo there, structures within the nucleus void of shape-shifting UAP. Very detailed. I like the layers that are able to come out in these images. Gosh, that's cool looking. The illusion of battle. I find this part really interesting because it's saying, hey, we've clearly laid out the science as to how these plasmoids are formed, why they move the way they do, and how, yes, it appears otherworldly, and how this may explain a lot of things that we have cited for the last thousands of years. So far, it's touched a little bit on saying, hey, this may not explain everything, which is kind of a safe way of presenting the information. Maybe that's truly how they feel. But we can see in these images that they are just moving and doing all kinds of neat, interesting things. Now, if you were to observe a particular storm of these things, you could see how this could look like a battle. So this figure 37, or description is targeting and collisions between plasmoids could be interpreted as battles being fought when these collisions take place above cities in the lower atmosphere and observed by humans on the ground. Note plasmas boxed in yellow and turquoise are each struck twice by different plasmoids, and both increase illumination and become brighter after they are struck. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Based on everything we've learned so far. So now they're going to talk about when plasmoids attacked Los Angeles. I think that's really interesting. February 24th, 1942, when there was quite the event that happened there. Might have to do that in its own episode, because I think it would be neat to get into history, show images, and then really touch again on the science of plasmids. Plasmids battle over Nuremberg. This was an interesting one. I know that I've heard about it in a past, I guess, ancient type alien shows. I like some of them because it really mixes imagination with some science and history. And quite honestly, I learn about time periods and places that I typically wouldn't. But this one was pretty fascinating. In 1697, the great fiery balls in the shape of a cannonball were seen floating along with a bright, shining, terrible lightning. And then one or both balls of fire exploded and then disappeared from the sight of many thousands of spectators along with the terrible lightning. Could you imagine? And then not really understanding what it is. I mean, imagine the stories that would come from these sightings. I mean, as it is, we have, like, let's just take the drone drama recently, for example. There are things happening in the skies. Some people are offering completely scientific explanations, but because we do not have a kind of source of authority or a source of science that we truly trust or feel that has our best interests in mind, it has left people to create their own conclusions about what they see. And it's honestly a great example, because when you come to like times in the 1600s where they're experiencing these fiery balls that thousands of people are witnessing, just imagine how they would interpret it. And then go back, people are starting to understand science then. Go back thousands of years prior to that and imagine how they would interpret it. And there, I think, is where a lot of our myths come from. These are really great images. Woodcut and broadsheet headline, 1697. Horrible fireballs accompanied by lightning appear over the city of Hamburg, Germany, and began to fight. Our interpretation, plasmas attracted to and are produced by the overhead thunderstorm, and what the Germans observed were plasmatic collisions in the lower atmosphere. 250 years later, on July 19th, July 19th and 20th, I think is what it's meaning, 1952, U.S. Air Force and air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base feared that the White House might be under attack by UFOs when they spotted numerous unusual blips on the radar screens that were clustered together, and looking out the window, strange balls of bright light that at first moved slowly, then accelerated at incredible speeds like falling stars without trails. F-94 interceptor jets were scrambled only to observe the objects suddenly disappear. And then later, the objects reappeared on the radar screen, raising fears that the capital might be under attack. More F-94 interceptors were scrambled when pilots reported observing very bright lights moving at hyperspeed only to disappear. When newspapers reported these observations and reporters began asking questions, the Air Force issued a denial stating that the radar blips were caused by a hot, muggy temperature inversion, known as a layer of warm air that had trapped cooler air beneath, and radar signals bounced off and reflected objects in the lower atmosphere as being higher in the sky. Temperature inversions also generate considerable electrical currents because of the accumulation of charged particles that can generate electrical charges or discharges and high levels of static electricity, conditions that might attract plasmoids. So here we have the image in 1600s Germany. Very interesting. Kind of reminds me of some of the biblical representations of some of the, I guess, angels, some of the different types of angels. I'm not super versed in all of the specifics there, but very interesting. Guess I should have left it here. Give you all the images. Plasma Star Wars. So here we just see some plasmoids moving, colliding, chasing, hunting, I guess, colliding. I love images like this. So cool. Woodcut and broadsheet, July, August 1566. Red and black spheres appeared over the city of Basel and engaged in battle. On April 14th, 1561, lightning orbs in various forms appeared over Nuremberg and engaged in battle. The bulbous crosses refer to orbs that merged. Our interpretation, plasmodic collisions in the lower atmosphere. I could see that. Not all UAP are plasma. So I think here in this section, they're just basically talking about, hey, plasma can account for a lot of different things. Here's the science behind it, why it makes sense. However, some don't quite appear to fall in this category. Now, I was watching a video from a plasma physicist last night, and he was talking about, he's been studying plasmas for 20, 30 years, and he still feels like he doesn't quite understand them. So perhaps maybe what I'm getting at is that a lot of these other sightings, experiences could just be an aspect of plasma that we're unfamiliar with. Here we have a single object shaped like a ring that approached the space shuttle and were followed by several others, stating they're right in front of the orbiter. Crazy. Okay, we are seeing 3 or 4 objects. Can you confirm it's just the one that's actually moving and the others are just reflections? However, by now, the 4th object had disappeared, obscured by the red circle, such that only a 3 ring-shaped forms remained. I'm beginning to think I should have gone into another profession. This is like could you imagine experiencing this as your job? Be crazy. The commanders of STS-75 and STS-117 reported that multiple objects approached outside the windows, moving about. We tracked it through windows 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it's outside window 5. This is noteworthy as plasma can pass through windows. Note also how NASA's emblem, the blue square, is obscured by noise and snow. So I think what they're saying here, and correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong, that one of two things is happening. They're saying, hey, we typically have this like beautiful, crisp NASA emblem, and that something interesting is being captured on video. NASA doesn't want us to see it, so they're making it blurry. And we can prove this because look, even the NASA emblem is blurred. Or based on some of the earlier kind of evidence as to what might occur if these are around, perhaps they are creating electrical disturbances that make it impossible to get a clear image, which kind of goes back to the thing where people always say, well, if these things are real, why don't we have a good video of it? And I think in some cases we do have good videos of UAPs, but it might just be that it's almost impossible to get good videos of UAPs for this exact reason. Lots of great stories throughout this article. I'm not even sure you can call it an article, a mini book, perhaps. I feel like it's a story time with Adrian here. To visualize these internal features, they used red, blue, green filters to detect gray value differences in pixels and enhance these different gray value spectra that were embedded in the film. So that's how we're coming up with these colorful images. I think they're just absolutely beautiful. I would love to see, just throwing this out there if anyone is listening, kind of taking a lot of the information in this article and really coming up with a illustration representation to show the different charges within our atmosphere at different levels and really how that creates the plasmas as described. As I was reading, I could kind of picture it happening, but I sure would love a visual of that process. There's great visuals throughout this whole 109 pages of all these things, caught on camera. However, it would just be nice to have some visuals explaining the science behind the plasmoids. So if anyone is feeling up to the task, maybe they're also on Christmas break from college, get to it. It's your homework assignment. Freeze frame from 30-second NASA film sequence in which the pulsating object circled in white was misidentified as the MIR. This pulsating form suddenly materialized and then took the stereotypical cone shape and flew at a 45-degree angle. As it reached center of the screen, the pulsating object coming from the upper right, circled in blue, began streaking towards it. The blue object split in two, leaving the form circled in green in its wake. Then pierced another plasma, headed towards the cone-shaped form, just as other smaller hunters began streaking towards the cone. Oh, I hate to say it, but you've seen it 2-3 times. I feel like we've kind of covered this. So I'm just going to maybe fly through some of these images. But I think on their behalf, great. I love that you've included it several different times to say, hey, it's not just this one time or 2 times or even 3. You caught it lots of times, which is super impressive. And I cannot imagine the amount of time it must have taken to get these images. Look at these different layers here. See, I would like to have somebody take an image like this and then kind of diagram based on what it says in the article, what the different layers are, what the different charges could be. Like even when they're colliding, merging, birthing, all that stuff. Like I want to know more about the charges and understand more of the, I guess, electrochemical physics, whatever's happening there. I would like to learn more. The cloud-shaped object would become completely dark, then glow, then fade to black, then glow. This black and white video should have crystal clarity, but like all nighttime space shuttle video, was contaminated with obscuring layers of rapidly alternating colors and white noise/snow after the video was received by NASA and before it was released to the public. Yes, I agree. It would be much easier if all the video was clear. That's pretty neat looking. Look at that. U.S. Coast Guard photographer took this photograph through a window screen showing three cloud-like formations over the Winter Island, Salem, Massachusetts. They say three, I see four. Okay. What's this down there? That looks weird too. The air station had radio, radar, and conducted sea rescues, and its facilities served amphibious helicopters and seaplanes. The weather and temperature at the time was basically conducive to the plasmoid formation. As a general rule, the surface dew point needs to be 55 degrees Fahrenheit or greater for a surface-based thunderstorm to occur. As can be seen from the photograph, the sky was dark and overcast, perfect weather for thunderstorms. I mean, yeah, I guess you can see that. Sorry, I'm obsessed with the fact that it says 3 and I see 4 and that. Oh, maybe we're talking about these 3. Blobs of brilliant white light observed by Army Air Force crewman Leonard Stringfield on August 28, 1945, during a flight in a C-46 flying coffin over the Pacific Ocean. The C-46 developed electrical problems and engine trouble and began to lose altitude. Everyone on board the flight thought they were going to die. Stringfield states that it is his belief that the sudden erratic behavior in my plane was due to a mysterious force generated by the blobs, because when the blobs disappeared, the pilot was able to regain control over the plane. Depiction of a 1962 luminous event off the bow of the ship near the coast of Brazil, and which was reported as a UFO, is also pictured as a glowing, pulsating cloud-like orb that ascended from a thunderstorm heading upward toward a NASA space shuttle. And as it neared NASA, turned off the camera. There is some serious NASA shade. NASA, show us your videos. Come on. Okay, I think we all need a stretch break. We're getting there, which is good because I have to get my daughter from school soon. It's her, both my daughters. One gets home at about 3 and the other at 4. And tomorrow, they don't actually have school on Fridays out here. I live in the country. But they start their Christmas break. So have to get this in today, or else I'm not going to get a chance. So it's another reason why I just have to go for it. And I apologize for all the mispronounced words and stumbling over my tongue along the way. I hope to do better in the future and also to be shorter. Okay, 21, speculation. Are plasmoids sentient? It's titles like this and sections like this that really piqued my interest and made me read the whole thing. I mean, 90% of the whole thing. A lot of the stories I had seen before, been exposed to before, because I do like my story time and mysteries. So yes, I'm familiar with a lot of them. If the plasmas described in this report constitute a fourth domain of life and include those with intelligence, is a subject of ongoing research by members. Okay, I think I'm going to have to start over. If the plasmas described in this report constitute a fourth domain of life and include those with intelligence, is a subject of ongoing research by members of this research team who strongly favor that view. Arnold, who viewed 9 of the flashing, shape-shifting objects in 1947, believed they were sentient and alive. Astronomers have also reported that plasma-like entities have appeared outside windows, often traveling from window to window as if looking inside, and in doing so upsetting the crew. Could you imagine? To speculate, I like it. You should start a sentence to speculate when that's what you're going to do, especially if you are publishing, in a journal, the Journal of Modern Physics. So good on you to speculate based solely on behavior and our ongoing analysis. If some plasmas are alive and sentient, then their level of intelligence or consciousness may approximate and range from that of algae to insects to canines, albeit completely alien. Okay, so they're saying, yes, they behave in ways that may appear like consciousness to us, that may appear to have intelligence. That being said, we're going to put it on the lower end of the spectrum. Perhaps one day we can train these plasmoids to fetch. Conversely, the actions of some plasma may be based solely on electromagnetism, charge coupling attraction, and separation repulsion. If pure automata, then at best these behaviors could be likened to a moth attracted to a flame, behavior that can be fatal when a plasma targets and collides with an aircraft or enters the cockpit windows. So it's also saying, sure, this could be intelligence, or it could just be um, arising naturally from the laws of kind of physics, charges, all that stuff. And when bad things happen, it's just bad luck, unfortunately. Many of the plasmoids of the ionosphere have interior voids that could be likened to a nucleus. We've seen that several times in a lot of the images. To speculate, these could be constructed as ganglia connected to nerve nets, because neural networks similar to the nervous system of planaria, the common earthworm, and insects, I guess they're saying, are often similar to those observed here. I feel like this is pure speculation, not so much scientific speculation. Although provocative to consider, it's also been reported that round glowing balls flared up inside spiral and spherical plasmoids generated in a laboratory. Therefore, these glowing orbs are additional evidence the specimens are plasmas, but if the orbs are ganglia is unknown. However, there is yet another explanation for the interior orbs plasmids. I'm beginning to feel that as these authors were getting to this part of their journal book, that they were also exhausted and these sentences became a little more difficult. I'm having a difficult time, but we are so close. Stick with me because the most exciting part in my opinion, has yet to come, and hopefully it'll be worth it. Worm-like looking, I agree. Creepy. Figure 48 is comparing the nervous system of invertebrates with the internal sphericals of plasmoids. Glowing spheres also appear in plasma generated experimentally and may represent individual plasma clustered together, but that resemble a composite cloud-shaped plasmoid. Speculation, plasmids, replicons, evidence of circular extrachromosomal DNA molecules. Interesting. A plasmid is a small circular double-stranded DNA molecule that can replicate and self-clone despite being distinct from the cell's chromosomal DNA. Facts. Also referred to as replicons, plasmids are capable of autonomous self-replication and can be transferred from host to host, referred to as horizontal gene transfer. Although some cells are known to possess hundreds of plasmids ranging in size from less than 1 kilobase pairs to huge megaplasmids of several megabase pairs, other cells may only have one. Commonly found in bacteria and archaea, plasmids are known to encode for proteins that enable these organisms to survive in otherwise lethal environments. Definitely going to make a future episode about plasmids. They are very interesting. As documented in this report, specimens believed to be plasmas, like experimentally generated plasmas, are capable of replication, one of which repeatedly split apart into additional plasmoids, and which, like the host, were found to contain circular structures. If these internal ovid structures are plasmids or balls of RNA DNA, they would have to at least be meters in size. Now, I feel like this is definitely speculation. That being said, I like it because it's talking about biology. And I think it's great to introduce some of this science to people who may not otherwise get a lot of exposure to it. It is well established that common elements in the known universe, which are essential to life, include hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, calcium, and phosphorus. Interplanetary dust is also carbon rich, and glycine and tryptophan. So you need glycine for an RNA base and tryptophan essential for protein formation. So these have been identified in the interstellar medium, so trying to point out. Because all these gases and elements may combine and are continually irradiated by ions, they can generate small molecules. If they continue to combine and grow in size, it is possible that within the cellular confines of plasma, they may become meters in size. Okay, interesting. Plasmas are common in space and the ionosphere, which are permeated by dust and fragments of carbonaceous chondrites, within which 73 extraterrestrial and 19 terrestrial amino acids have so far been identified. Exclamation mark. I want to look more into this. Please, somebody put it in the comments below. Reminds me so many interesting, like little side episodes to just focus on one small thing. According to Alphaven, plasmas contain cellular membranes, whereas plasma with a nucleus have been repeatedly observed. Plasmas that incorporate this debris within their membranes are known as dusty plasmas. This, I feel like, is an actual very important point of this whole article. I was unaware of dusty plasmas, and one thing, just coming from from an intense interest in biology and what it means to be alive. One of the big questions is, where did life originate from? And I feel like this offers, at the end of the day, a very interesting idea. Okay, dusty plasmas. Once exogenously incorporated into the confines of a dusty plasma membrane and nucleus, this molecular protein, amino acid complex, and the building blocks of nucleotides and other vital prebiotic molecules will be subject to ion chemistry as well as polarized radiation, which induces asymmetric photochemistry, leading to homochirality and the induction of chiral asymmetry, which can produce an excess of L amino acids. Again, this part is super interesting. A lot to get to after as long as we've been talking. I think it's really worthy of its own episode if you remind me. In combination with tryptophan, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, cyanide, these amino acids could form adenosine, which is an RNA DNA base, as well as other nucleotides that could grow up to several centimeters within a dust-induced plasma void/nucleus, leading to electrically charged lattice and corkscrew-shaped assemblies of nucleic and amino acids that produce enzymes and proteins within the nucleus. This electrified combination could then begin catalyzing reactions leading to the generation of self-replicating RNA-like polymers and protein enzymes that resemble RNA but are chemically simpler and can act as a catalyst. Oxygen and phosphorus could also ladder RNA DNA base pairs together. That's interesting. Not so sure about that. In consequence, dusty plasmas may acquire RNA-like capabilities, leading to the formation of plasmids and thus a fourth domain of DNA-based life. So, well, this is again another example of I feel like there's a lot of science that is likely based in fact. I have not double checked this area kind of line by line, so I'm trusting them for part of this. That being said, there's this, okay, facts, this makes sense, building, and now we have a fourth domain of DNA-based life. Maybe I'm just not getting it. I find it interesting nonetheless. Okay. According to Tistovich, so sorry, of the Russian Academy of Science, these complex self-organized plasma structures exhibit all the necessary properties to qualify them as candidates for inorganic living matter. Now, when I read this, I thought to myself, I need to look up some definitions because, yeah, I'm just so used to organic living matter. It's almost like it should be its own, I guess, category. It's so unique if we're going to say that it is living. It's definitely inorganic from what it appears. And there's lots of things you need in order to be considered living. In fact, viruses aren't even considered to be alive. So I guess maybe they can join viruses. A number of scientists have, in fact, argued that the conditions necessary to generate living plasma are common in space and that plasma may be a common extraterrestrial life form. I mean, fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure 99% of everything we see that's outside of Earth is actually plasma. So, sure. If this scenario has validity, plasma may be the source for the origin of life, and this would imply that every gaseous Earth-like planet would likely harbor plasmas that could generate life, including planets that formed and where life evolved billions of years before Earth was formed. However, it must be emphasized that experimentally produced plasmas have not been found to contain any of the precursors to the formation of a single nucleotide. This is where my head went down after reading 90 pages. If those internal spherical forms are plasmids, or what their function might be, or if they represent many plasmas joined together, or represent the birth and generation of additional plasmas, or consist of internalized plasmas within plasmas, is unknown. So a lot of speculation, but sure, I love speculation. A fourth domain of life. Basically, this is just saying that, a lot of this could be just due to nature, forces, things of the like, and that they have many different ways of interacting. Really, I didn't find too much in this section that was super interesting. I feel like I must have missed something. Sorry, I'm just going to skim ahead here. Okay, then we get to conclusions. Yeah, I feel like there wasn't anything in that last section that was, I guess, worth highlighting. Okay, let's take our last look at some of these plasmids, and then we'll get to conclusion. And then I will be done with my first quote-unquote live stream. I was going to do this live. However, I learned that with StreamYard, you have to verify your account, and it takes 24 to 48 hours. So I thought if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it at all. And streaming in a live sense just terrifies me. So I thought I would just rip the Band-Aid off by making myself sit down for hours and read to you, give my thoughts, and stumble on words. I feel like after this, though, it may have worked. I feel like after this, I could probably do a short one. I mean, you can be mean to me in the comments below if you'd like, but just know that usually I've likely already thought that towards myself. Oh, I could have done this better, that better. I mean, you know what it's like to be human. Be kind, be encouraging. We could all use more of it. I guess I should have been paying attention. Those are really neat objects. Okay. I think by now we know I love these with really defined sections. Here we have just some really faint blobs, but look at this, like this cloud. What did they call it? An electron cloud earlier? It's like plasmoid magic. Wouldn't it be neat if they can make like a little kid's toy with different colored plasmoids that, it's obviously safe when you move things around, or you can have a little dial and change the like electromagnetic fields and create different colors and shapes, and that would be neat. So beautiful. I almost feel like they should have started with these images. These are really neat. Conclusions, page 96, home stretch. I think in the comments below, you should let me know if you made it to the end. It's like a rite of passage. Okay, the term extraterrestrial is derived from the Latin words terrestris, earthly or land, and extra, which is derived from exter, outside, outwards, or beyond. Thus, by definition, extraterrestrial refers to any object or being that was not born or does not live upon or is not characteristic of objects or life on this planet, but lives or originates outward from Earth. Sorry, having a hard time reading that sentence. The upper atmosphere, by definition, including and especially the ionosphere and plasmasphere, is outward from Earth and directly affected by cosmic rays that originate outside the system, and which may contribute to the formation of plasmas, which in turn may originate in or journey to the ionosphere from other planets. So it's saying, hey, this is the original definition. Based on this definition, these indeed are extraterrestrial. For example, Earth's GEC can be considered a paradigm for planetary electricity. For every planet with a gaseous atmosphere and where lightning is common, like Jupiter and Saturn, it is therefore reasonable to suspect that plasmoids also dwell in the upper atmosphere of these two gas giants where thunderstorms are common. On Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, and presumably all gaseous planets with atmospheres, electric charges are generated by cosmic rays, ultraviolet radiation, and by friction, bolide impacts, not sure what that is, as well as by cloud charging, volcanism, and dust. Lightning is common on Jupiter and Saturn, and is thought to originate from water clouds deep in the atmosphere with temperatures at about 300 Kelvin, where water is likely to exist in more than just one phase. That is definitely true. For Jupiter and Saturn, the outermost cloud layer consists of ammonia, ice particles, which is followed by an intermediate ammonia hydrosulfide cloud layer and deep water cloud layer. Lightning is plasma that attracts and produces plasmas. Lightning was associated with Jupiter by the ancient Greeks and Romans. I'm not sure why this is in the conclusion. And detected optically with the camera on Voyager 1 and by Voyager 2, as well as by Galileo. The Voyager plasma wave instrument also detected lightning whistlers in Jupiter's magnetosphere. It is reasonable to assume, therefore, that plasmas similar to those discussed in this report also swim in the atmospheric seas of Jupiter and Saturn. Totally agree. Makes sense. We believe that plasmoids that arrive in the thermosphere from locations unknown should be described as extraterrestrials. That's fine based on your definition. I feel like you've kind of given the reasons for that. This is just a recap of a lot of the stuff that we have definitely talked about. Although these electromagnetic entities engage in behaviors that seem purposeful and which may represent curiosity, such as appearing outside space shuttle windows as if looking inside, or materializing inside a cockpit and then slowly traversing the aircraft, one must be careful not to anthropomorphize what may be push pull electromagnetic activity. On the other hand, the dominant energy that fuels the human brain is electromagnetic. I like that sentence. I think it's like a good way to bring back the science, but then to say, but hey, this is also science. Kind of leads to some interesting thoughts. So, are plasmoids alive? Do they represent a fourth domain of life? Do different subtypes of plasmoids belong to a fifth, sixth, or seventh domain of alien life? As reviewed here, and as based on additional research, the evidence supports the hypothesis that plasmoids have provided the composite basis for the origin of RNA, followed by DNA, and thus life. I think I'm going to need a little more evidence for that. And that plasmoids in the thermosphere are sentient, aware, and have consciousness. I thought we just said that we can't anthropomorphize. If this later theory proves to be true, then since plasmoids likely dwell in the upper atmosphere of every gaseous planet, it can be predicted that plasmas have been spawning life on innumerable worlds, including those formed billions of years before Earth. If this later proposition proves to be true, then life would have likely evolved in innumerable worlds, even reaching the level of modern earthly humans billions of years ago. Might some of the UAP UFO observed over the centuries include craft and machines manufactured by hyper-technological advanced races of beings that evolved in ancient Earth-like worlds? Hard evidence photographed by NASA on Mars, albeit at present unconfirmed, favors this view. In conclusion, given the evidence presented in this and other reports, it is highly likely that plasmas and plasmoids account for many of the encounters with the observations of UAPs over the century, including those observed flying above cities and diving beneath the sea. Plasmoids, however, cannot account for all UAP sightings, at least some of which may be extraterrestrial spacecraft from other worlds. We did it! Oh my goodness. And there are a ton of acknowledgement references, the works, I mean, just pages upon pages. What did I just see that interests me? Origins of life and evolution of biospheres. Yeah, maybe I should just go through the references and get some ideas for channels. Okay, tell me in the comments below what you think. What are your thoughts on everything that we read? Oh my gosh, have I been sideways this whole time? Probably. I'll try better. I'll try harder next time, okay? Just rip the Band-Aid off, embarrass myself. I will try harder next time. Let me know what you think. I wanted to just kind of get this article out there. And I wanted something that people could listen to if they were working, although I probably didn't present it in a relaxing enough manner to do that. But I found it interesting. I think there were a lot of great scientific points. A lot of that did not, to me, point to kind of a, I mean, I can see with their definition of extraterrestrial. Now it's a little hard to say this. It didn't really point to it being like a alien life form. It seemed to have a very natural conclusion and cause. And I'm actually really glad that I read the article because I learned a lot about plasma and plasmoids that I previously did not know. And as somebody who really finds the kind of boundary between what is known and unknown very interesting, I do like to watch a lot of things that are dealing with the UAPs, different phenomenons, and this really helped clear up, in my opinion, a lot of the things observed and seen, and really did a lot to kind of explain a lot of the phenomena in the UAP world. That being said, there were a lot of claims that tried to almost like revive the UAP in terms of a I don't know, extraterrestrial in the sense that we usually think of it in terms of that kind of leaning. They tried to like revive it a bit. Maybe it was so that they wouldn't make that population of perhaps readers or followers upset. I don't know. Or maybe it's just what they believed. Let me know in the comments what you think. And let me know what I should do next. I have some ideas. Like I said, the video I was going to be working on today was going to be about how DNA uses electricity to kind of highlight where errors are within the code, and does this in order to be able to fix this at like lightning speeds, because every day there's about 1 million errors in our DNA. So really it has to create ways to handle this that are, in a sense, out of this world, really, but are actually based completely in biology and science. It's cool stuff. So let me know what you think about that. If you want me to dive into something else, thank you for your time. I wish you a great rest of your day. Bye.